All right, everybody, here we go. We're on the road hauling. Whoops, unpause. There we go. Hauling trucks to Houston, Texas here. I'm hauling trucks with a truck. And I'd like to talk about induced demand, which is highly appropriate for being out here on the roads, because induced demand is usually used to discuss what happens when you build more road to alleviate traffic. And the idea is that when you build more roads to alleviate traffic, then you get more traffic to go on the more road, and then you have to build more roads to alleviate traffic. Induced demand means the demand wasn't there until you put something that made people want to demand it. Well, okay, let's talk about how induced demand is working. Now, you've got a couple of things that come into play. Let's say we've got a really congested road, which we don't have right here. This is a pretty wide open trail here, but let's imagine it chock-a-block with cars. It's a parking lot. And, well, I mean, we've only got 2 lanes. Why not add 1 more lane? That would increase capacity. And rather than having everybody slowly increase, because you have a 50% increase in capacity, well, then you should be able to have cars move faster. The route takes longer. You don't have that congestion at all. Things are really improved on that road. Okay, so if the traffic is constant, then yes, that's true. But then you've got people who are used to that road being all congested and stuff, and they just plan on not ever driving on it until you add another lane. And then they go, oh, well, now that there's no congestion there, I'd like to drive on that road. And so they do. Then the road gets congested again. Then you add another lane, and then you have more people decide, oh, wow, they got 4 lanes. How could it ever get congested? And then they drive on it and make it congested. And we do see this happen. There are some places where a 10% increase in traffic flow causes a 10% increase in traffic, which then negates the flow, and you have that situation. All right, so we have the people who are just going to volunteer to drive on that road because it's now less congested, and that's how they're going to do it. But at the same time, you've got to have roads keep up with population. If there's a lot more people in an area, there's a lot more demand for road in that area. And if you don't increase the capacity, then you don't have a congestion problem. You have a complete gridlock problem, which even if you got rid of all pedestrian traffic, if you got rid of all voluntary travel, tourism stuff, you still have road usage for commuting drivers, deliveries, service vehicles, things that are going on all the time. Yes, if you add more lanes, you're going to have more voluntary traffic because people want to do a little more tourism or drive to that place across town that they hadn't driven to before because it was so far away and congested. But you still have people who are going to be driving that road every single day needing to use it. And if you don't improve the width of the road to handle that congestion, you are going to have total gridlock, and that congestion spreads to other streets. Whereas if you make the roads wider and the people move to the wider roads, they may be taking traffic off of surface streets. So you may have the induced demand for the new road, but then reduced demand for side streets, less convenient methods of getting there. Anyway, this is a big argument in urban design and urban planning, and also infrastructure planning for routes in between cities. You got people who will say, why bother building a road? Let's try instead a road diet. Okay, fair enough. There are some cities that have had successful road diets. San Francisco is case in point. They took the Embarcadero Freeway after it had a collapse during an earthquake, and rather than repair it, they just removed it completely. It was an ugly freeway to begin with, and by removing it, they created a much lighter traffic zone. It was more pedestrian friendly. It became better for tourism, and nobody really missed that road. Rather than removal of the road leading to more congestion, it just meant drivers avoided the area completely. There was no congestion because the drivers stayed away. Another place that I heard about was Curitiba, Brazil. I saw a news magazine report on it. It was from Australian news, of all things, but hey, that's the beauty of cable TV back in the day. You could get channels from all around the world. He said, taking the corner a little too fast. Anyway, the Australian television broadcast company, they went out there and they looked at Curitiba, Brazil, because it was a place where they had completely gotten rid of their main roads in town. They just stripped them out and made them into parks. Then they had other roads that were buses only. All right, and if you're thinking a bus is a big hassle, well, not if the buses are running every 2 to 3 minutes. You get to a bus stop, the longest you have to wait is a few minutes. You're on a bus, and the buses have low congestion on them, and you can get everywhere you want because the bus is operated in a grid pattern that crisscross the town. A lot of other public transit systems may have a spoken hub system for their buses, where you go in from the suburbs, you go into the city center, and once you're in the city center, you transfer to a new bus, and then you drive out to somewhere else. So that really increases the trip length. Like if I want to go from, say, point A to point B, rather than get a direct route to it, I've got to go, maybe 20 miles into town, get on another bus, and then drive 20 miles back out, when a 10-mile cross-town route would have worked out well. Well, that's what Curitiba did. They had much more efficient bus coverage, whereas the city I live in, Dallas, we do a spoken hub. We have very few cross-town routes, and it can take a very long time to get somewhere by bus. And there's also more time in between stops. It's just not that well used. But Curitiba, Brazil, by getting rid of the streets into town, they basically forced residents to use buses. And then the buses were so efficient that everybody did use them. And it became one of the happiest places to live in the world. And when you find a happy place to live that's outside of Scandinavia, well, you got to do a news story on it. And they talked about how the downtown being all pedestrian was more vibrant. And the mayor of Curitiba had a really interesting point. He said the car is like your mother-in-law. You love her, but you don't want her to move in with you and take over your life. Residents still had cars, but they would only use them in driving from Curitiba to other cities. They wouldn't use them within the town because of the bus system. So there's a good argument to be made. Go on a road diet rather than increase the size of the roads and have that pent-up demand for road usage go out there. To have the and then the other thing would be to make sure your mass transit system is flexible enough to handle that growth in population. You could add more buses, trains, trams, what have you, to take care of things. I'll also say I've been in both Amsterdam and Vienna, which are two cities that have a very excellent level of coverage for mass transit. Multimodal. You can go from a train to a tram to a metro to a bus and back and forth. They've got crisscrossing and interlocking all over the place, so you can get the right kind of transportation for the kind of transport that you need. It was great there. All right, well, like I said, though, I'm back here in Dallas, and I'm driving in America, and we've got really wide spaces in between our cities. And if you look, most of the usage on this highway is trucks. Yes, we're going to have some passenger vehicles. That's what I was looking for, passenger vehicles earlier. But most of it's trucks. Most of it is commercial traffic. And if we have an uptick in commercial traffic, then we want to increase the capacity of the roads to handle that commercial traffic, because it's going to happen. You need that there. And that maybe the solution to congestion would be for passenger vehicles who are electing to go on a road, maybe help to pay for it. The trucks are already doing it. They've got taxes on their tires and gasoline and the truck itself. They're doing fine there. They're going to pay plenty of taxes, but let's have those passenger vehicles, make them pay a toll. And that is one solution for induced demand. You build the new lanes, but you make them to where you either have to be registered as a high occupancy vehicle, HOV, or you are willing to pay a toll. And in some places, the HOV gives you a discount on the toll, but you still pay the toll. And that's what we have in the northern part of Dallas where I live. We have the Texpress lanes, they call them, on the LBJ freeway, which is a very important freeway that crosses east-west on the north side of Dallas. Normally, there is lots of congestion on the non-toll lanes, and the toll lanes, in general, run very quickly. So if I have to drive to the airport, I will take the Texpress lanes, enjoy a quick trip. I'll pay a toll, but I get to enjoy those those new lanes, and get to drive on them the way they were intended to be driven upon, to allow people to move faster from A to B. There are times where there's a wreck on it, and that'll slow things down, or an exit ramp isn't quite the way it needs to be, and I just go around those because most of my travel is going to be from my house to the DFW airport. Because I work from home. I'm sitting in my office right now making this video here. I've got the door open, letting a breeze come in, because this is Texas and you take a cool breeze whenever you get a chance to do so. And that's where I am. I'm in my home office. I don't drive to work. So if the freeways are expanded, great. I'm happy with that, but I don't have to pay. I don't have to worry about getting into the I don't have to drive to work, so I don't this guy here is really cheesing me off here. I'm going to pass him up, even though it's speed limit 65. We're going to get ahead of him because I think I'm going to have to stop by the way station here. And yeah, pull in. Okay, if I can get ahead of the guy. All right, there we go. Oh, dinged him just a little bit. Oh, well. He shouldn't have been there. Yeah, we're coming in hot. Where was I? Oh, yeah, driving across Texas here. Yeah, I work from home. And this is something that we have to take into account, that as we have increased homework, or the ability to work from home, then we have reduced demand, or reduced passenger demand, especially for commuting. But we're going to have the same commercial demand. So I'm doing my part by working from home. But anyway, getting back to that induced demand. Even though I'm working from home, I'm also ordering more things online, which have to be delivered to me. And you can see where this is going. I'm going to increase what I save on my personal traffic. I'm going to increase in terms of delivery traffic. So there's still some induced demand, but it's not because they widen the road. I'm just demanding more stuff. And again, it's that commercial traffic that we're dealing with here, not the voluntary passenger traffic. Now, yes, there are cases where, especially in big urban areas like Los Angeles and New York City, where you have a very high concentration of population, and because they're living in especially in California, when you have a suburban area there, it's very car dependent, car heavy. They just need to use that road a lot, and so when you add more lanes, you have a lot of pent up demand that was wanting to use those lanes, and they will use them, and they'll use them at all times of the day. They'll like leave early to get somewhere, just knowing that they have to drive in more traffic, and that puts higher demand on the road. Yada yada yada. They have higher demand. But you've also got other parts of the country where, when you add additional lanes, it really is just due to population growth, and once they're added, the congestion is gone, and it stays gone. It's not everywhere that you have induced demand. It's going to be in your high population centers. Okay, so what about taking areas and making them just pedestrian only? Well, there's a mixed bag with that. There are some places where stripping out the roads and making places like little downtown sections pedestrian only, there's places where that's succeeded, and the people who live there, work there, whatever, they like it that way. They use mass transit to get down there. They walk around, and they're having a great time. But those tend to be in areas where the temperatures do not have extremes. because when it gets to be wintertime in some places and you've got bitter cold and lots of snow, or in Texas where I live, where you can get extreme heat, and there is no such thing as a walkable city at that time. It's all horrible. you you know, those pedestrian only areas get deserted. There are, if you look at the pedestrian malls that were created in not just in Texas, but it's a really good place to check, and just nationwide. Between 1970 and 2010, it's like only 30% of them are left, and those that are left tend to be in areas that used to be really, considered high class and Tony, and because the pedestrian mall area just plummeted in traffic, they've fallen off, they've fallen out of favor. People tried it once and then didn't like it or whatever. They're in considered run-down areas. One such place was nearby where I am. It's called Firewheel Mall. Now, when it opened, and gosh, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, like 15 years ago from here. Malls in Texas, in North Texas, were already going down, and these were closed-in, air-conditioned malls. They were already on the way down. Online shopping had begun to take off, and delivery services and things like that were really working well. So people are just having less foot traffic in these places. And a solution, people thought, was, what if we create these open air malls, a pedestrian experience? People can get out and walk around and go from shop to shop, like we'll reinvent Main Street, but we'll have plenty of extra parking. And in the springtime and the fall, those were great. During the summer and winter, it was like misery. And online shopping continued to grow in popularity, to where we thought, why would we want to bother going all the way out there to do our shopping? We can just go to an online clothing store that has a generous return policy. We could buy ebooks. We could get whatever's in the local store, buy that, and then people say, well, let's start the buy local campaign. Well, the thing with Firewheel Mall was it was in between Dallas and Garland, a major suburb. It wasn't a downtown anywhere. Downtown Garland is different from Firewheel Mall. Actually, no, it's not even between Dallas and Garland. It was between Garland and Saxony. It was in the boonies. They just built it there. People would drive, park, and have a fun time, and then it got hot, and they said, forget about it. So downtown Garland businesses and downtown Dallas businesses and local neighborhood stores, those were the buy local stores. Firewheel Mall was mostly chain stores. Why, if you're going to buy local, buy from an actual local store, not a chain store. And so about the only thing that was left there were the restaurants. And then why would I want to go to that, the whole idea of going shopping and then having a nice dinner at a restaurant? Well, it's gone if you're not going shopping. And if there's a restaurant that's closer, you'd go to that one. So yeah, Firewheel Mall really just went in terms of popularity and usability and all that stuff. It was just didn't work out. And that's a case of where, trying to create these pedestrian zones flopped. Now, true, you had to drive to get there. But then there's other places where if they close the streets off to non-local traffic, drivers avoid them completely. For residential areas, well, then that's a good, they can see that as a good thing. Less noise, less traffic, less problem, of that sort. That's fine with them. And there's a number of residential neighborhoods around here that'll put barriers between a major street and one of their boulevards. So that way you're not using the boulevard as a detour in case there's congestion on the main street. But they'll keep the boulevard there because it's needed for local traffic, but they'll put speed bumps on there or lots of stop signs to reduce the speed and frequency of traffic. You'll only use it if you actually live there, rather than I'm going to make a shortcut across there. Hey, check out the train. Isn't that cool? So yeah, for residential areas, that's fine. But for commercial areas, it can be a kiss of death. You make a commercial area pedestrian only, and if the pedestrians aren't willing to go there, then you can just kiss all that commercial traffic goodbye. The businesses will be forced to relocate somewhere else. In America, people want to drive and park somewhere, get out of their car, get into the store, get what they want to buy, and then get back in the car and drive home. Or they've got a series of errands to run, and they don't want to use a bus because they've got to go to different places at different times, and the bus doesn't quite handle it that way. And besides, the bus has no cargo capacity. So if you want to carry a lot of stuff, you're either making multiple bus trips, which is a lot of time spent in transportation, or you're that guy and you have way too much stuff and you're taking up extra bus seats with all your stuff. And if it's a crowded bus, they all give you the hairy eye. It's just, you feel better using a car or a truck, especially if you're going to a like a large furniture store or IKEA. This has not been a sponsored video, but if you're getting some stuff that's large and bulky, you're going to shove it in the you can take the seats down in your van or SUV or put it in the bed of your truck and haul that wherever you need it to go. And you're not doing that on a bus or a train or a tram. We like to have our roads. We like to utilize them, and so induced demand. It's a valid criticism. I'll give that. It's a valid criticism, but I don't think it's the answer is to just stop building additional lanes. There's places where you need additional lanes, and there's also additional value that you get out of those additional lanes. Not all of them become congested. We get a lot of places that they do all right when they add those extra lanes. Now it looks, and really when I'm driving on these wide open Texas lanes here, I'm cruising through downtown El Paso, and we've got 4 cars on the entire freeway. This is not Texas. This is a video game. It's a simulation. It's not reality. I've been in congestion, but I've also been in places where it's been just fine. Now, one place I can think of that really does illustrate the idea of a wider road being a better thing and not inducing demand. My wife is from a town in South Texas called Rockport. It's about 30 miles north of Corpus Christi. Now, Rockport, Texas, was a sleepy little community for many years. Then it got discovered. People would travel there for vacationing, for what were called snowbirds. People who are, say, retirees from up north would get in their recreational vehicles and drive down to South Texas and just live somewhere for the winter months. Because South Texas in the winter is a lot more fun than Minnesota in the winter. And but that's their nickname, the snowbirds. And they would live there during the winter months, and they'd head back up north. And it helped out because by the time they went back up north, it was time for spring break in Texas, and that would be bringing a different group of people to the beach. And then after that, you have your summer traffic. So really, the snowbirds helped to keep the town going all through the winter months. You wouldn't have seasonal unemployment there as much. Those restaurants would stay in business. They weren't tourist trade dependent only. That was a really nice thing. All right. Well, so that was the way it was through the 80s and early 90s. And then as cities in Texas began to grow in general during the later 90s and forward, Rockport grew. It's essentially a bedroom community for Corpus Christi. If housing prices were getting expensive in Corpus, you could buy something that was inland in Rockport, and you would have a 30-mile drive into work, and you'd be okay. And also, because it's on a beach, well, it became popular as a beachfront community. And as beachfront communities across the nation in the USA got higher and higher demand, eventually they moved to places like Rockport and drove up demand for the housing there, and more people moved in and so forth. And the population really grew in Rockport, Texas, to where before it had one traffic light. I remember when it had more than one traffic light, but I remember when it was really light on traffic. And it got to be where you could actually have a rush hour in this little pokey town. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, they widened the roads. And they also built a bypass. Now, a bypass is a road that goes around a town. So rather than going through the town and having to slow down for all the stoplights and stop signs, you instead just go around it because you don't really want to go to the town, you want to go somewhere else. Well, that bypass cut down on the traffic going to Rockport from Houston on, there's like a highway there called Texas 35. It's not Interstate 35. It is not a U.S. highway. It's a Texas highway. But Texas Highway connects Corpus Christi to Houston, Texas. And you get a lot of truck traffic on there. So rather than go through the sleepy little town of Rockport, have those trucks just go around it. Same way they had a bypass around Victoria and other towns along the way. It's a really good thing to help commerce move along. So with a combination of a wider road for the local traffic that was increased due to the increase in population, and the bypass that let trucks that didn't want to go to Rockport keep on going at highway speeds past the place. And you think about it, which would you rather do? Drive 75 on a highway all the way, or drive 75 until you got to a 30-mile stretch of where it was like 30 miles an hour and then get back on the highway? You'd rather stay all the way on the highway. And that's what the trucks do. Except for the ones that have to go to Rockport, but, well, that's what they're supposed to do. Anyway, I digress. And so by adding additional lanes and a few more traffic lights and building that bypass, traffic problem was solved. Rockport's still an easy town to get around in. There's not congestion there, and it's able to handle the population growth that it's had. All in all, that's a good deal. Was there induced demand when they widened the roads? Yeah, because, instead of having to take the back roads to get where you wanted to go, now you could get on the main drag and move around that way. It was fine. We're heading into San Antonio soon. San Antonio, Texas is another town where, yeah, it's got some traffic on the north side, but by and large, I've had really good experiences in San Antonio with not hitting really, really horrendously heavy traffic. For some reason, it's just kept up with growth. Now, maybe that's changing as San Antonio grows. Both San Antonio and Austin are growing pretty well. Austin had a lot of congestion. No question about that. But that's also because most of the roads in Austin are north-south. There's very little east-west. San Antonio had set it up with a ring system because it had a lot of north-south, east-west traffic all through its history. And it's done a really good job, I think, of managing that. But we're going to see, I guess, what happens some more when San Antonio continues to grow. Is it going to be able to keep up with that? Or is it going to, widen roads, and then after widening roads, have more people drive on the wider roads? And, I got to get to San Antonio here. Let's make sure I get over here. Yeah. There we go. We snaked it just fine. That's fine. I'll get back up to speed now. Anyway, yeah, that's always been a good one there. San Antonio is a good one. Austin is one where, yeah, you build the wider road and it fills up right away because they've just got Interstate 35 and Mopac for going north-south. That's about it. Oh, yeah, if you're on the east side, 183, but that's another story there. But they're always totally congested, whereas in San Antonio, you got both sides of 810, and then you got 35 going straight through, and you've got Interstate 10, and it just seems to be a lot more well-served with its roads. Now, Dallas can get congestion real bad. Any time of day, Dallas can get congestion. Fort Worth, not so much, and it's only 30 miles away from Dallas, and you wonder, well, why is Fort Worth so much less congested than Dallas? And it's because Fort Worth is a different city. And also because I think Fort Worth has got a lot more movement around the ring than it does through the center. Dallas traffic tends to, again, do that spoke and hub thing. It's only got the 635 loop, and then it's got Loop 12 on the interior, and then it's got the George Bush tollway on the outside. But all of those don't make a complete ring, and yeah, and Loop 12 has got its own set of congestion issues there. Whereas Fort Worth, if you stay out of downtown, you can pretty much avoid some of the worst of the traffic there most of the time. And I think it's a place where, yeah, you build an extra lane and it'll alleviate the congestion and people just get on with their lives. But north of Dallas, we're seeing a lot of growth in the communities there, where you have these places that used to be very tiny towns suddenly exploding in population. Places like Flower Mound and Frisco and Prosper and McKinney, Allen, Plano, and then points beyond. Even Sherman and Denison, which are almost to the Oklahoma border, for goodness sake, they've taken way off in population. And you got these little 2-lane blacktop roads that were originally there for just farm traffic, suddenly having to deal with 20, 30,000 people on top of them. You know, the area used to have 500 and now it's 20,000. And it's not just the roads. You've also got to increase the plumbing infrastructure, the whole water system, the electrical infrastructure. All that stuff has got to be there. You've got to increase the hospital size and accessibility, because now you have a much larger population in your catchment zone. Law enforcement, fire coverage, everything has to change when those areas explode, and the road network must be changed in order to accommodate them. Otherwise, you just have congestion simply because you have lots of people there. And you just got to build a wider road, and when you build more roads, yes, more people are using them, because now it's not a total parking lot. It'll crawl along at 20 miles an hour instead of be a complete standstill. And that's just how it rolls there. It literally rolls. And we never talk about induced demand when we talk about plumbing. It's not like people are holding off on flushing their toilet until somebody builds a new main line. People use plumbing no matter what. People use a lot of things no matter what. Roads tend to be that, because they have that odd situation where you can look at the traffic on a road and you think you know how what to do to alleviate that traffic, but you have no idea about what traffic isn't on that road because of that condition, and they're just waiting for the road to widen before they get a chance to use it. So that's induced demand. Meanwhile, I'm driving through Texas here. This is West Texas. It's a dry region. You don't see a lot of trees. It's mostly shrubs. I mean, some of these things that look like trees from a distance are actually shrubs up close. But I love it. It's a beautiful, rugged landscape. I absolutely love it. How far are we from San Antonio? Oh, I got another 257 miles, and then we got another, I think, 200 after that to get to Houston. And that's where these trucks are going. But I've been going on for a while, so what if I just go ahead and hit pause? Oh! And say thanks for watching. I'll just tab out of that and hit stop here. I'll drive around some more. We'll see you later here. Have fun, everybody. Drive safe, and remember, induced demand can be your friend or enemy, depending. Anyway, I'm doing that thing where I ramble on and I need to just cut myself right off, because I have not yet figured out how to exactly stop everything that I'm doing and just make an end, a graceful end. I just keep going on, and I don't see